Monica, who is that man walking through my hallway with a suitcase? For 3 seconds, my sister said nothing. I sat upright on the hotel bed, staring at the security feed on my phone. It was 11:47 at night, and a man I had never seen before was carrying luggage past the family photographs in my hallway. Then another camera triggered. A woman walked into my kitchen, opened my refrigerator, and started looking through my food like she belonged there. "Channel, calm down," Monica finally said. "Calm down. There are strangers in my house. They're just friends." Then the front door camera showed Derek, my sister's husband, handing another stranger a key. Behind him stood Monica, carrying a stack of freshly folded towels. My stomach tightened. "Get them out." Monica sighed. "You're hundreds of miles away. Why does it matter?" That question changed everything. Because 3 days before leaving for my 6-week work assignment, I had installed security cameras around my house. And somehow, I had forgotten to tell my family. I was Channel Carter, 34, a property claims adjuster who spent most of my working life documenting what happened when other people's homes were damaged. I never imagined I would need that skill for my own. I had given Monica a spare key for one reason. Our mother worried about my house sitting empty during storm season, so Monica agreed to collect my mail, water my plants, and check the property after bad weather. Nothing more. Yet through my phone, I watched strangers disappear into my bedrooms. By sunrise, I had ended my assignment early. When I reached home the next morning, Derek opened my front door and frowned. "You came back." I pushed past him. Scratches ran across my hardwood floor. A dark stain covered one corner of my sofa. Decorations were missing. Unfamiliar sheets covered my bed. Then I opened the garage. Boxes containing my clothes, photographs, books, and personal belongings had been stacked against the wall. Monica followed me inside. "It looks worse than it is." I turned toward her. "You have 1 week to put my house exactly the way you found it and pay for everything you damaged." Derek laughed. Actually laughed. Monica folded her arms. "Channel, we're family. Stop acting like we're criminals." I didn't answer. That evening, I remembered something neither of them seemed to be thinking about. The cameras hadn't started recording last night. They had been recording since before I left. I opened the security archive and began scrolling backward through 6 weeks of saved footage. Friday. A couple arrived carrying suitcases. The previous Saturday. Different people, more luggage. Another weekend. Another couple. Then another. I stopped scrolling. If Monica and Derek had only invited a few friends over, why had complete strangers been arriving at my house with suitcases almost every weekend since I left? The next morning, I asked Monica to come over alone. "No, Derek," I said, "just you." She arrived 20 minutes later looking irritated, as if I had inconvenienced her instead of discovering strangers inside my own house. I placed the spare key on the kitchen counter between us. "Do you remember why I gave you this?" Monica glanced at it. "Obviously. Mom was worried about storms. You were supposed to collect my mail, water the plants, and check the house." She leaned back in her chair. "You gave me access, Channel. You never said I couldn't stay here." I stared at her. "I also never said you could move strangers into my bedrooms. They weren't strangers to us." "Then who were they?" Monica looked away. That was the first time I noticed it. Every time I asked who those people were, she answered a different question. She started talking about money instead. "Derek and I have been struggling," she said. "You know that. We needed a little breathing room." For a moment, the old guilt worked. Monica had always known how to make her emergencies become my responsibilities. But this time, I had 6 weeks of recordings sitting on my phone. "So tell me their names." Silence. "Monica." She grabbed her purse. "I don't have to sit here while you interrogate me." After she left, I opened the security archive again. This time, I wasn't casually scrolling. I was investigating. I selected 3 different weekends. On the first recording, Derek greeted a couple at the front door and walked them through my living room. Then he pointed toward my bedroom. On another weekend, he did almost exactly the same thing. Bedroom, kitchen, patio, garage. Different couple, same tour. I opened a third date. Same routine. Then I found something that made me sit completely still. A kitchen recording showed Monica taking my framed family photographs from the shelves. One by one. She carried them out of view. Hours later, after the visitors left, she returned and put them back. I checked another date. She had done it again. They weren't simply inviting people over. They were making my house look less like mine before those people arrived. I took screenshots and sent them to Monica. Explain this. She was at my door within half an hour. What is wrong with you? She snapped. I held up my phone. That's what I'm trying to understand. You've been recording us. It's my security system, in my house. You need to delete those videos. No. Her expression changed. Channel, recording your own family like this is creepy. I almost laughed. You're worried about being recorded. I'm worried about why you're removing my photographs before strangers sleep in my house. Again, she wouldn't answer. Instead, she stormed out. That night, another motion alert appeared on my phone. I opened it immediately. Derek was standing beneath one of the cameras. He stared directly into the lens. Then he reached up. The image shook. His hand covered the screen. And the camera went black. By day 4 of the deadline I had given them, almost nothing in my house had been repaired. The scratches were still on the floor. The sofa was still stained. My belongings were still boxed in the garage. But Monica had apparently found time for something else. She called the family. When I arrived at our mother's house that evening, I knew what she had done before anyone even spoke. My mother was sitting beside Monica. Derek stood near the dining table with his arms folded. 2 relatives were there too. Mom looked at me and sighed. Channel, this has gone far enough. I stopped near the doorway. What exactly has gone far enough? Threatening your sister over a few scratches. I looked at Monica. She wouldn't meet my eyes. Derek did. We already told everyone what happened, he said. Our apartment was having problems. We stayed at your place temporarily. That's it. I took out my phone. Then who were all the people paying you? The room went silent. Derek's expression changed immediately. Nobody paid us. Monica stood up. Channel, don't do this here. You brought the family into it. Because you're trying to destroy us. I opened several screenshots from my cameras and placed my phone on the table. Different dates. Different couples. Different suitcases. My mother picked up the phone. What am I looking at? People arriving at my house while I was away. Derek shook his head. Friends of friends. All of them. Yes. And you gave them keys. He hesitated. Monica cut in. It wasn't what you're making it sound like. Then explain it. Derek finally exhaled. Fine, a few people stayed there. They gave us some money. My mother frowned. Money. For cleaning, Derek said quickly. Utilities, things like that. I looked directly at him. So strangers paid you to stay in my house. It wasn't rent. Monica turned to Mom. See, this is what she does. She twists everything. Mom handed my phone back. Channel, if they made a mistake, they can repay you. This doesn't need to become a war. For one second, I wondered whether walking away would be easier. Then my phone buzzed. A message from someone I didn't know. Hi, are you Channel Carter? I'm supposed to stay at your property soon, and I'm having trouble reaching the manager. Is my 3-night reservation still confirmed? I read it twice. Then I walked outside and called the number. A woman answered. "I'm sorry," I said. "Who did you book with?" "Derek." My grip tightened around the phone. "You paid him?" "A deposit, yes." "Can you send me whatever he sent you?" A minute later, screenshots appeared. I opened the first one. My living room. Second, my bedroom. Third, my backyard. There was even a polished description underneath. Professionally managed, family-owned furnished property. I stared at those words. This wasn't friends helping with utilities. They had listed my home. I walked back inside. Monica was talking when I entered. I didn't interrupt her. I simply crossed the room and held the listing in front of Derek. The color drained from his face. Mom leaned closer. "What is that?" Derek said nothing. Neither did Monica. For the first time since I'd come home, nobody was telling me I was overreacting. I picked up my phone. My deadline just changed. Nobody touches anything. Monica stepped toward me. "Channel." I backed away. "I'm calling the police." Derek stopped smiling the moment I unlocked my phone. "Channel, don't be stupid," he said. Monica moved between us. "Please, this is a family problem. We can fix it ourselves." 4 days earlier, they had laughed when I gave them a week. Now they were asking me not to make one phone call. I made it anyway. When the officers arrived, I didn't give them theories. I showed them what I had. The damaged floors. The stained furniture. My belongings boxed in the garage. The rental listing. The message from the woman who had already paid Derek a deposit. Then one officer asked, "What permission did your sister have to use the property?" "Collect my mail, water the plants, check for storm damage." "Did you ever authorize paying guests?" "No." "Did you authorize her husband to give anyone keys?" "No." Monica immediately interrupted. "She gave me access to the house." The officer looked at her. "That's not what I asked." Monica went quiet. I was told not to repair or throw away anything yet. I needed to preserve the messages, photographs, payment information, listings, and especially the security recordings. So I did. Then I changed the locks. Monica watched from the driveway as the locksmith removed the cylinder her key used to open. For the first time, access to my home was no longer something she could argue about. That night, I started building a timeline from the camera archive. The pattern became impossible to ignore. Friday evening, guests arrived. Derek gave the tour. Sunday morning, guests left. Monica cleaned. Furniture moved. Family photographs disappeared before arrivals and returned afterward. Then I reached the night Derek disconnected the camera. The timing bothered me. I went into the garage. This time, instead of focusing on my boxes, I looked behind them. My stomach dropped. Cheap partitions had been installed across part of the space. Behind them were 2 mattresses. A lamp was connected to a long extension cord running across the floor. They hadn't just stored my possessions there. They had created another sleeping area. I photographed everything before touching a single object. That changed the situation again. Now there were questions about unauthorized alterations, occupancy, and safety, not simply damaged furniture. I contacted my insurer and provided the documentation, while investigators began identifying people who had paid Monica and Derek. Then more information started coming back. The woman who messaged me wasn't the only future guest. There were several. Some had already sent deposits. And their reservations didn't end when my work assignment was supposed to end. They continued for weeks afterward. I stared at the dates. Monica had claimed they only needed temporary financial help. Derek had called the guests friends of friends. But the bookings showed something much simpler. They had never planned to stop before I returned. My phone rang. It was one of the investigators. "Ms. Carter." "Yes." "We've finished tracing the payments." I sat down. There was a pause. Then he said, "You need to see how many there actually were." When I met with the investigator, I carried 6 weeks of my life in one folder. Screenshots, messages, photographs of the damage, the rental listing, my original texts telling Monica exactly why she had the spare key. And most importantly, the security camera archive I had almost forgotten existed. The investigator laid everything out chronologically. Once I saw it that way, there was nothing accidental about what Monica and Derek had done. Different guests had paid to stay at my house on different dates. Derek repeatedly welcomed them and gave nearly identical tour. Monica removed my photographs before arrivals, cleaned after departures, and prepared the rooms for whoever came next. They had collected money from completed stays. They had also taken deposits for future reservations. Some of those reservations were scheduled weeks beyond the date I was originally supposed to return home. That detail stayed with me. This wasn't something they intended to do, while my house happened to be empty. They had built a business around a house they didn't own and apparently expected me to deal with the consequences later. The investigator tapped the timeline. The recordings are important because they establish a pattern. I looked at the dates again. 6 weeks. All documented by cameras Monica and Derek hadn't known were there. For once, nobody needed me to prove how I felt. The evidence showed what they had done. A few days later, Monica came to my house alone. She stood outside because her key no longer worked. When I opened the door, her eyes were swollen. "Can I come in?" "No, we can talk here." Her mouth tightened. "Channel, please withdraw the complaint." I said nothing. "Derek thought it was harmless," she continued. "Your house was just sitting here. We were having money problems. He said people needed somewhere to stay and we could make enough to catch up." "You agreed." "I didn't think it would become this." I looked past her toward the driveway. "Why did you remove my family photographs?" She stopped. "If you thought you had permission, why did you hide every sign that someone actually lived here?" Monica opened her mouth. Nothing came out. That silence mattered more than another excuse. She had removed those photographs because strangers weren't supposed to know they were sleeping in her sister's home. They knew exactly where the line was. They crossed it anyway. The consequences didn't disappear because we were related. The money Monica and Derek collected became part of the investigation. Future guests demanded their deposits back when their reservations were canceled. I pursued reimbursement for the documented damage and restoration costs, including the unauthorized changes Derek had made to my garage. And suddenly, the relatives who had told me to forgive a few scratches stopped calling it a misunderstanding. They saw the listing. They saw the payment records. They saw the photographs of the mattresses and makeshift partitions in my garage. Even Mom stopped asking me to apologize. Derek, meanwhile, became much less amused by deadlines. The man who had laughed when I gave him 7 days to repair my house was now asking for more time to deal with the financial consequences. I didn't argue with him. I didn't need to. For years, Monica had been able to turn her emergencies into my responsibilities. That ended with the locks. She lost her key. She lost the access code. And she lost the assumption that being my sister automatically entitled her to whatever I had. The repairs took several weeks. I considered selling the house, but eventually I realized that would feel like giving them one final decision about my life. So I restored it. The damaged flooring was repaired. The sofa was replaced. The unauthorized partitions came out of the garage. My boxes came back inside. And one afternoon, I placed my family photographs back on the shelves myself. The house slowly stopped looking like evidence. It became my home again. Monica and I remained distant. I wasn't trying to punish her. I simply understood something I hadn't understood before. Consequences can end long before trust returns. And yes, I kept the security cameras. The difference was that now everyone in my family knew they were there. Sometimes I think about how differently everything might have ended if I hadn't installed them 3 days before leaving. Monica could have called the guests' friends. Derek could have denied collecting money. They could have claimed the damage happened once, by accident. Instead, 6 weeks of footage preserved every arrival, every suitcase, every prepared room, and every attempt to make my home look like theirs. My sister thought having my key meant she could use my home, but the cameras proved exactly where permission ended and betrayal began.